Well, good afternoon and welcome to the second OnCore Live webisode. I'm your host, Robin Bell, and I'm really looking forward to our interviews here today. Now, for those of you just joining us for the first time, you might be wondering, what is OnCore Live all about? Well, OnCore Live brings industry leaders and Avery Dennison experts together in an engaging live format to help you serve your customers with insights and services that will help you grow your business. At the end of the broadcast, we're going to have a question and answer, but you can certainly send those questions to us throughout the webisode and we'll address them at that time. Please post those questions in the Q&A tab in your meeting toolbar and not in chat for this webisode. In this second OnCore Live webisode, Isabel Wright, Senior Technical Manager with Armacell, is going to be talking to us about the Armacell component foams, and she's going to give us a look at our new bonding study. Steve Flannery, Avery Dennison Performance Tapes Vice President and General Manager, is back with us to give us some insight into the supply and demand balance, what's going on with raw materials, and he's going to touch on staffing. We're going to begin our broadcast today with Susan Sutton, Editor-in-Chief of Adhesives and Sealants Industry magazine, also known as ASI magazine. She's going to be talking about the current state of the supply chain. Now, that's something a lot of us are interested in hearing about. Based on the insights of key players in the industry, Susan will address how organizations are dealing with the impact of COVID-19, the winners and the losers of the pandemic, and she's going to preview one of her publication's upcoming features. With that, let me say welcome to OnCore Live, Susan. We're happy that you're here with us today.
Oh gosh, Robin, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this should be a lot of fun. So, Susan, to start, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your publication, ASI?
Absolutely. So I've been with BNP Media, our parent company, for over 20 years. ASI publishes a monthly e-magazine. We also have a website that's updated daily. We produce 2 e-newsletters, as well as the Bonding with ASI podcast and the ASI Insider video series. We focus on technical features, case studies, industry news, new products, new technologies, all of that fun stuff. And we also try to cover just some general trends to help our adhesive and sealant formulators, manufacturers, and end users kind of navigate what's going on in the world and try to understand how it might impact our industry.
So you're pretty much covering it all.
Well, we do what we can.
You do what you can, that's right. You know, I'm wondering, you probably never had to report during a global pandemic in the past, right?
No, this would be my first.
No, this will be your first, and hopefully your last.
Yes.
So looking back at 2020, as editor-in-chief of ASI, what was it like reporting during a global pandemic? And from the outset, what impact did COVID-19 have on the supply chain?
Well, I mean, it was very hectic. Obviously, like everyone else, we were trying to figure things out, you know, almost on a daily basis. It seemed like things were changing. But at the beginning, I was trying to get a handle on how the pandemic might impact the adhesives and sealants industry, you know, like everyone else. And as part of our coverage, I reached out to Dan Murad, he's president of the ChemQuest group, to discover what their research found. And at the time, this is again at the very beginning of the pandemic, a lack of supply wasn't really the main problem for materials for adhesives and sealants. There were some shortages. Alcohols, for example, were being diverted, and rightfully so, for hand sanitizer production. There were some issues with photo initiators and perhaps some pigments and dyes that were being sourced out of China. But the issues that we were running into typically at that time really had to do more with the geographic location of the source of materials, not that the materials weren't out there. The issues with tariffs in China were causing some pricing issues as well. But the main issue really for adhesives and sealants materials was transportation, with the shutdowns and all the travel restrictions, as well as the driver shortage. It was really just an issue of getting the raw materials from point A to point B.
Yeah, geography really did play a role in this. So now that we're heading into a post-pandemic world, what supply chain issues is the industry seeing now? And also, what steps have companies been taking to navigate the volatility?
Well, sure. So we're just putting the finishing touches right now on a piece for our July 2021 issue. It's an industry roundtable. I reached out to key players all along the supply chain. We got responses from raw material suppliers as well as manufacturers of adhesives and sealants. And the first question I asked was, how are supply chain issues impacting your business? And we got a lot of really very thoughtful, thorough responses to that question, and all of the questions. As a matter of fact, I really appreciated the great participation we got for this piece. But the bottom line really is just that the supply chain is much more volatile now than it has been certainly in the last year or so. There's several different factors at play that are causing the volatility. One of the main problems was Winter Storm Uri back in February shut down a lot of Texas and parts of Louisiana, and that shut down oil production for the most part, at least, certainly a large portion of it. And that impacts adhesives and sealants because we really rely heavily on the petrochemical feedstocks for our production. So that reduced supply led to an inability to obtain materials in a lot of cases, as well as certainly the related price increases that come with limited supply. Now, at the same time, our adhesives and sealants manufacturers are looking to build up their inventories. Inventories were pretty low over the last year or so due to low demand. And so, the industry was looking for more supply when there was not as much supply available. And that's never good for anyone, unfortunately. Costs are going up. And transportation remains an issue. I think the driver shortage is probably worse now than it was this time last year. So to kind of, navigate their way through all this mess, it feels like a lot of times the companies are taking lots of different steps. Some are pretty creative, some are pretty straightforward. From the raw materials and chemicals suppliers side, a lot of companies are very simply just increasing production, whether they can add a shift, a third shift, or perhaps a weekend shift, or perhaps they're expanding their facilities, but they are definitely working to increase their output. For adhesives and sealants manufacturers, they have, if they haven't before, they're certainly now looking beyond their kind of tried and true business partners to source their key materials from multiple suppliers. So they're looking to identify, plan B, plan C, plan D opportunities for instances where their main supplier perhaps can't fulfill their needs for a key material.
Go ahead.
Sorry. One thing that both material suppliers and manufacturers of adhesives and sealants are looking to do more is digitalization. And that essentially means employing a digital platform to offer a solution. So e-commerce would be a good example of a digitalization solution. It provides a flexible, more convenient, hopefully, experience for the purchaser while streamlining various processes for the suppliers. So in terms of supply chain, digitalization it addresses a number of concerns, really. It can provide visibility kind of all along the supply chain. It can help track demand and sales levels. And it really, different platforms can just make processes more efficient and flexible. So digital solutions can help with trends and forecasting. It can help with streamlining inventory management. There's really lots of possibilities there. But digitalization can also provide benefits beyond the supply chain, just in terms of general communication, for example. I don't know about you, but I haven't spent a lot of time in an in-person meeting in the last year or so. So Zoom and similar platforms are really offering digital solutions for communication, whether it's internal or external. Troubleshooting, problem-solving type meetings can be held virtually, and that has really developed, I think, more than anyone really thought possible a year or so ago. But digitalization can also even help with general operations. One company I heard from is using, or they're exploring at least, machine learning and artificial intelligence to help them with some of their manual business tasks. So I thought that was interesting, something to look for in the future.
Yeah, AI is definitely taking a stronger lead now, and certainly resiliency in IT and certainly digitalization. Why don't we switch gears and take a look at the other end of the spectrum. In terms of end-use markets, which ones have been the winners and which ones have been the losers throughout the pandemic?
Well, when I spoke with Dan Murat of ChemQuest back at the beginning, it was late March, early April, they had identified a few end-use markets that they were terming, kind of projecting as winners, neutrals, and losers for the pandemic. One of the winners that certainly definitely proved to be a very strong industry is residential DIY construction. You know, we were all stuck at home with the stay-at-home orders. We had projects that had piled up that we hadn't had a chance to get to. We might have needed to develop a home office or a school space for the kids since schools were closed. So DIY residential really was quite strong throughout the pandemic. Other projected winners were multifamily residential construction, which did go quite strong really until the last, there's been a little bit of a slowdown in the last couple of months too, I think probably to the lumber shortage and labor shortage as well, but it's been pretty strong. Other winners were packaging, medical, safety, health, and wellness as well.
Yeah.
So the losers that they projected was transportation, which absolutely 100% correct. Automotive has struggled for sure.
Yeah.
And auto repair and finishing kind of rides along with that. But transportation's starting to come back, thankfully, so that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Other projected losers were professional residential construction, durable goods, oil and gas, and marine and leisure. But when I was putting together the industry roundtable for our July issue, I asked about what end-use markets were offering our respondents opportunities. So the really strong winner that I'm hearing is packaging. You know, once again, everyone was at home, stores were closed, we were ordering online, e-commerce went sky high. And so, you know, packaging opportunities for adhesives and products like tapes and labels really benefited from that aspect of it. Labels were also strong for medical and pharmaceutical, for example, and also for temporary signage, social distancing signage, for example, was kind of a surprise winner. The medical market is doing pretty well. Wearables, for example, there are various new technologies that have been developed and are continuing to be developed to address various needs, certainly the COVID patient needs with, you know, actual medical devices being affixed with adhesive patches directly to the patient. So that's ongoing. And consumable goods has turned out to be a winner throughout the pandemic. One kind of surprise win for me, I hadn't thought about this at the beginning, was residential toilet paper sales were much higher than commercial toilet paper sales, which makes sense because people were at home instead of at work, but residential toilet paper requires more adhesive than commercial toilet paper. So that was a surprise win.
Yeah, and a surprise all the way around, I think. Let's finish this up. And can you give us a quick preview of what's coming up in your next issue?
Absolutely. So in addition to the industry roundtable piece I've been discussing, we will also have in the July issue our ASI Top 20 listing of the leading global manufacturers of adhesives and sealants and related products. So to put together that article, we reach out to leading companies in the industry and request their sales details and other information that's specific to adhesives and sealants whenever possible. And we couple that information with details from annual reports, investor presentations, press releases, resources of that nature. So it's always our very most popular article of the year, and I'm really excited to kind of share that with the industry.
And when does this issue come out?
It was our July issue, so some of the content we'll start posting later this month, and it'll post on the website throughout the month, and the issue itself is scheduled to deploy, I believe, the second week of July.
Okay, something to look forward to. This has been great, Susan. Thanks for your time. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of questions for you at the end of the broadcast. To read more from Susan and her colleagues at ASI, visit adhesivesmag.com. We've been having many conversations with converters and OEMs regarding the state of the marketplace. We're talking about what's going on with raw materials, the supply and demand balance, and of course, staffing. Now, to get those insights, we brought back Steve Flannery, Avery Dennison Performance Tapes and VP General Manager. Steve's able to give us a unique perspective based on Avery Dennison's vertically integrated adhesives and film setup. Steve, welcome back. Really glad that you're here with us today.
Thank you. It's always good to be with you, Rob. And I just want to thank everyone on the line listening in too. I know everyone's busy. So I appreciate everyone taking the time to listen in to Susan, Isabel, and myself talk. So
I do too, so let's get to it. This is exciting. So, big question on everybody's mind, according to our salespeople: when will things get better? Can you shed some light on this for us?
Sure, I'll try here. So my crystal ball is not much better than most others, I'm sure, on the line. But Avery Dennison, as I'm sure most people on the line know, we buy about almost $4 billion worth of materials and related supplies for our company. So we've got a lot of insight. We're also backward integrated in adhesives. So we actually polymerize our own adhesives as well as buy adhesive from suppliers like BASF, Ashland, Henkel. So we've had a fairly close relationship both downstream in some of those feedstocks that Susan talked about, as well as through our close relationship with some of our partner suppliers. I would say, as Susan said, there's some good and some bad. The good is the disruption here that from Storm Uri is past us. All suppliers essentially are up and running, and they're continuing to increase their capacity literally week over week, month over month here. The problem that we've got is just a little bit of imbalance. So obviously inventories were already low, and essentially got basically completely depleted. So they're really working to catch up on their inventories and get us all back to a steady state position. That's going to take a little bit of time here.
Yeah.
Again, I would say June is going to continue to be pretty bumpy, just like May was fairly bumpy in terms of supply through some of the finished goods adhesives. So folks like Ashland and Henkel and BASF, they have most of their customers on sales allocations today, whether it's 100% or 110% or 90%. They are managing the supply demand until they get caught up here. But again, we're starting to see some relief. I expect July to get a little bit better, and September yet again a little bit better. So again, we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, but I would say the light at the end of that tunnel is still a bit unknown. But I think we are past the worst of it here, and things should continue to get better.
That certainly makes you feel a little better. So, how has Avery Dennison been able to handle this?
Sure. I mean, it's been difficult for everyone. It doesn't matter where you sit in the supply chain. A couple of things. Again, I mentioned we're backward integrated. So those of you who don't know the technical sort of details of making an adhesive, there's really, at least for most of Avery Dennison's adhesives, are acrylic based. So whether it's solvent or water or UV. So acrylic is a big component, of which there's two main components or two main monomers that we buy, BHA and 2HA. Those, we actually buy the raw materials and convert it on our side or polymerize it on our side to make the adhesive. So that flexibility has really allowed us to serve our customers better than I think we would if we didn't have that capabilities. We're able to pull both raw materials from whether it be the spot market in Asia or some of our tried and true suppliers, as Susan talked about. We were able to pull levers on our plan C's and plan D's, along with, again, the close working relationship we have with some of our partner adhesive manufacturers, has really helped us to minimize the impact to our customers. Having said that, demand, on top of this supply constraint, demand, I would say, has really been through the roof. We're seeing demand above not just last year's levels, which is easy to do, but really well above 2019 levels as demand continues to increase for just about all the areas that we talked about, even some of the areas that Susan laid out as losers. We're actually seeing some fairly strong demand in some of those areas, and I'm sure some of the folks on the line are also seeing that as well.
Yeah, that's good news. So because supply and demand has imbalance, and it's going to be with us for a little while longer, as you were saying, what are the implications for this moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, again, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to realize that this is sort of economics 101, supply demand. Again, Susan mentioned it. When supply is constrained and demand is high, prices adjust accordingly until that comes in balance. So we're dealing with that now. I mean, literally a week does not go by where we are not getting an increased letter from one of our suppliers, both in terms of just the cost of the materials and the supply imbalance. And many suppliers up and down the supply chain are making just economic choices as to at what price they want to sell their products at, based on the value that they see in the marketplace for their products. So it's one that we're continuing to manage through over time here. And again, it's hard to say when this is going to end, but I think we're going to see this for at least the next 6 to 12 months. And in fact, just to quote ISM, the Institute for Supply Chain Management, looks at an index that in particular looks at delivery length. So a lot of us are experiencing delayed deliveries as a result of the supply chain imbalance. I mean, we're seeing supply deliveries in terms of the time of deliveries on par with what it was in the mid 70s. So we're seeing extreme delays in deliveries, which again is all part of this, these suppliers up and down the value chain of making decisions as to who's the first priority versus second priority and at what price they charge for them. So again, it's going to be a bumpy, I would say next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
Even though I just said, I think it's going to get better.
Yeah. And hopefully we'll see a little bit better movement towards reduced pricing in the weeks and months ahead. I'm not so sure this is sounding reassuring to our listeners, but what is Avery Dennison doing about all of these issues?
Sure. I mean, like most of us, and again, this shouldn't be much new news to folks on the line, but we are working wherever we can to ensure, again, where we've got leverage in terms of being able to self-supply materials or go right to the source and get costing pricing, we're doing that. And candidly, I think this creates opportunities up and down the value chain, as many of the folks on the line are probably making decisions, do I buy from a 3M or Performance Tapes or a Barry Plastics? It creates an opportunity because some of our suppliers are being less flexible and we're making choices with respect to who are we able to partner with and not. And then obviously, again, we're working closely with our customers with respect to where we've got opportunities to substitute raw materials. In particular, on the foam side, even in case of some of the liners, we literally at any price can't get that component, any particular component. So we're working hard to find alternatives that we can substitute in that are as close as possible with respect to performance, look, and feel, to both maintain prices and maintain supply, which maintaining supply is really our number one priority for us and for our customers.
Of course. Can you touch briefly on staffing?
Sure. And I know this one's on my mind because I've talked to a number of our customers, and this is an issue across the board. And I actually would argue this is, I think, something we're going to continue to experience with respect to the inflation conversation. We are no different than many of the folks on the line. We're finding good employees is not easy. And we're seeing both wage inflation as well as is just difficulty finding folks. So, I would say it's something that we all should be sharing about different tactics that we're doing, broadening, widening the net for folks. I think we're digging deeper in terms of building stronger pipelines of employees. So working more closely in some of the communities in which we operate at the high school level to pull folks that we think and to advertise our company to them so that they want to work for us. Because this is, I think, something both on the tape manufacturing as well as downstream and upstream, staffing is going to be a big issue, and something, if you're not thinking about it today, not just for yourself, but how it might impact the industries you serve and how your products can help with that problem, is something you should be thinking about.
Yeah. Well, overall, it sounds like you're doing everything that you can, and I applaud you for that. Steve, thanks for your time. Thanks for addressing some of these issues on the minds of our audiences. I'm glad you touched on raw material supply and demand and staffing, 3 of our big issues. Thank you, Steve.
Cool. Thanks, Robin. And feel free, those of you who have any questions on anything we're doing or anything on the industry or suppliers, please put your questions in.
Yeah, and again, post those questions in the Q&A tab on your meeting toolbar. You can do that now. Joining us now is Isabel Wright, Senior Technical Manager, Armacell. During this interview, Isabel's going to offer commentary about the recent bonding study that our organization's just released. And she's going to highlight the many products that are available to converters from Armacell's deep selection of component foams. Welcome to OnCore Live, Isabel. Good to have you here with us today.
Hey, Robin. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So why don't we begin with Armacell? Would you tell us just a bit about Armacell and in particular component foams?
Okay, Armacell's a global company with 24 plants worldwide in 15 countries, and we have over 3,000 employees. We're divided into two divisions, the Advanced Insulation Division and then Component Foam or Engineered Foam Division. So I'm going to be talking about the Component Foam Division, which is playing in the markets of heavy and automotive, like you see on the screen here. We've got products in commercial and commercial construction, packaging, industrial applications like electrical enclosures, a lot of marine applications, medical, leisure, and quite a bit in the athletic market also.
Yeah, so no doubt you certainly offer an extensive range of products and also market segments. Can you tell us a bit more about Armacell's go-to-market strategy and the role of the foam fabricator in your business model?
Yeah, so Armacell manufactures a majority of our products in large format. I'm talking full thickness, full length rolls, continuous rolls in rubber, elastomeric, and polyolefin products. And we are also manufacturing full format in bun products or blocks. And these are around 2 inches thick, and the rolls are up to typically 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches, and up to 2 inches thick, depending on the density. And we're making the polymers, the elastomerics, and polyolefin foams in both formats. And we're also making profiles, extruded profiles and shapes in both polyolefin, which is plastics, and elastomeric, synthetic rubber. We're expanding all of these products or most of these products in majority or different polymers. The general purpose EPDM neoprene blends for elastomeric, vinyl nitrile, epichlorohydrin specialty foams, and the polyolefins we're expanding straight PEs, cross-linked and non-cross-linked, and then some EVA PE blends in the cross-linked formats. So our go-to market, because of our large format, full thickness, you have to have the right equipment to cut and convert these foams to final application thickness. So a skiver, a splitter is needed for the majority of our foams to go from the 1 inch or 1.5 inches down to the 1/8 inch, 3/16 or whatever thickness is needed for the different markets. So our strategy is to go through major master converters. There's a few of them in the US and certainly around the world. And beyond that, there are some converter fabricators that have their own equipment, but also then die cut and fabricate the foam directly and then sell to for automotive to tier ones or maybe even sometimes directly to the OEMs. So our converters and our converter fabricators are applying the adhesive to these different foams that were now cut into different thicknesses.
Yeah. Why don't we talk about the recent bonding study? What has been the benefit to you when working with Avery Dennison on the component foam study?
Okay, well, the pandemic was a great time to do a nice project like this. We had some time on our hands to provide all the samples for you. The benefit for us is that we don't apply adhesives, so we don't have that adhesive knowledge because we're, again, full format, and our converters and our foam fabricator customers are the ones that are applying adhesive. I'm in the senior technical manager. We get a lot of questions every day, almost 24/7 at this point, to ask about which products are meeting which automotive specs or which industrial specs, which military applications, and sometimes they actually want to have us recommend which adhesives are working best for which polymer, which densities, which cell structure, and we don't have that information. So a collaboration with Avery Dennison really gives us that information to tell our customers which Avery Dennison or adhesive works which different polymer and different cell structure formats.
So why don't we let's take a look at the screen. Let's switch that slide over and take a look at this. So this is specific to your, this particular study was particular to your Armacell and Solite product line and the Avery Dennison adhesive families. So can you walk us through what our viewers are seeing here and more what they can expect from reading this study?
Well, the study was very comprehensive. It dealt with 3 of our product lines. This is the end slide is on the screen. The Monarch elastomeric line was also evaluated, and the polyolefin Olatex line was evaluated in many different densities and firmnesses and cell structures. So here's an example of the Ensolite product line. A few of the products are closed cell, some are softer and firmer, and different polymers. We've got EPDM represented, some lightweight NBR PVCs, and some heavier duty, firmer NBR PVCs, including 2 cell structures. The top 4 products on the left are closed cell, and the ECF 400 is a crushed semi-closed cell foam. So the Avery Dennison bonding study was able to identify which were adhesives in their line were good, better, and best for each particular product. Whether it was going to generate foam tear with or without heat lamination, and which ones needed additional heat to get a better bond. So these details were for all 3 of the product lines. So this was very comprehensive and certainly helpful for us to recommend to our customers.
Yeah, I can see that it's comprehensive. Thank you so much for sharing all this great information with us today, Isabel. This was really an insightful discussion. The complete complete Armacell bond study, that's available for you. You can download it at tapes.averydennison.com and also at armacell.us. Thanks again very much for your time today, Isabel. Well, we are almost ready to begin the Q&A with our guest speakers. And if you have any more questions, go ahead and post them now in the Q&A on your meeting toolbar. Just a couple quick announcements. On July 29th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to be doing an EV battery webinar. I think you're really going to find this interesting. Check your inbox in the coming weeks for a registration email. We also want to let you know about our next OnCore Live webisode, currently scheduled for Thursday, September 16th. Save that date, if you will. All right, so we've got our 3 guest speakers back with us for the Q&A. Let's get started. We've got our first question. This one, we're sending this one to you, Isabel. So the question is, how does heat impact foam application?
Okay, well, different polymers are resistant to heat at different levels. So some of the vinyl nitrile foams don't have very good low or high temperature resistance. Some of the medium resistance products are blends of EPDM, neoprene, and SBR. And our highest heat resistant product in the Monarch line, or the whole component foam line, is ECH. It's epichlorohydrin. So that polymer is excellent for temperatures around 300 Fahrenheit, and also oil and fuel at the same time.
Okay. We have another question here. Also for you, Isabel, are you impacted by supply issues in foam?
Early on in the pandemic, there certainly were some supply issues, just like Steve and Susan had very well talked about. But our suppliers have stepped up to the plate and have increased capacity, and we've been doing certainly much better here the last couple of months.
Oh, this is good to hear. Steve, this one goes to you. How does the JDC expansion impact the supply and demand issues? Question.
I guess the short answer to the question is it doesn't really. I mean, for us, I think what it does, and as those of you who've done an acquisition, been part of an acquisition, you know, things don't become one company overnight, so it takes some time. So a lot of the products and everything that JDC was doing before, they're still doing all that. So we want our goal is to have zero disruption to our customers. So, everything that you were getting previously, you should still be getting. What it will do longer term is it creates a bit more flexibility for us to procure materials and share across both facilities. So, for example, if there's a liner that's shared between two facilities, we can move materials very easily back and forth. I get calls, I don't want to say on a frequent basis, but from time to time from our competitors asking, hey, do you have any of this material left over? Can you share some with us? It just makes that a lot easier for us, whether it be an adhesive, a liner, a backing material, a tissue. So it will actually, and has already started to make things a little bit easier for us to find alternatives and/or to share material. So I would say that's sort of at least what we're seeing up till this point. And I only see that getting better over time as we find which products are offsets from each other, and we can more easily swap them out if for some reason there was any sort of pinch, which we've actually done that in a couple of cases where a customer of the legacy JDC was not able to get a raw material through JDC, and we had an offset that was very similar, and it was qualified through that end user, and we were able to quickly swap it out and give them an alternative without creating a disruption.
This is great that you guys are able to do this. I wanted to ask this next question of Susan. This goes to you. The pandemic, of course, it impacted a lot of things. How about companies' R&D efforts? How has it impacted their R&D efforts?
I was kind of surprised when I put together this latest industry roundtable. I asked about R&D, and most of the respondents said that they have at least continued their previous level of R&D, and some even took the advantage of the pandemic to expand their R&D and development efforts. So I thought that was really kind of inspiring. I kind of discovered the same thing when I was putting together the ASI top 20 as well. I think it depends a little bit on the markets that the companies serve, but for the most part, I think adhesives and sealants manufacturers really are recognizing that their customers are looking for solutions, and so they're responding by developing innovative products to meet those needs.
Mm-hmm. We've got time. It looks like we've got time for a couple more questions. This one is this one goes to you, Steve. It's what potential new opportunity markets do you see in the next 2 to 3 years?
Sure. Yeah, and I'll key off a little bit of what Susan talked about. Obviously, the pandemic has changed things a little bit. So as we look at online shopping, there's some trends that immediately shifted here. And I'll go through some of the obvious ones. Although automotive is a at least from our perspective, is a segment that's pretty up and down, and it's moderately low growth here in the United States. Those of you who have exposure to China's still growing, and then electric vehicle battery. And I don't know, Susan, you probably have talked to some of your constituents. There's absolutely expected to be an increase of not just dry adhesives, that is tapes, but also wet adhesives in the electric vehicle, and in particular battery systems. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, at least in that specific sort of group of applications. I think Susan talked about medical. We see continued opportunity in that space as a whole. And then, we talked about the chip shortage, a lot of components, especially things where, both the world is getting smarter, more electrified, RFID. I mean, Avery Dennison as a company, I think most people know we're pretty heavily invested in RFID. I mean, that we're talking well into double-digit growth. So I think there's a number of areas that are poised for growth, but in particular, especially for some of these tape, whether it be converters or folks in the value chain, even in industries or in segments that aren't growing fast, there's generally application spaces that are. And I think that's where you've got to have conversations. And I'd urge you, whether it be to talk to some of your contacts at Avery Dennison or, folks like Isabel at Armacell, ask them what they're seeing and engage in that conversation, because depending on who you are, I might have very specific feedback if I sat down with you and said, well, where do you guys play today? Because I think there's opportunities everywhere. I mean, tapes and adhesives is growing above GDP across the board. It's just a matter of picking spots that both fit your capability and specific applications that are growing.
Well, thank you so much, you guys. This was great. That's a wrap for this webisode of OnCore Live. We appreciate so much our panel and our discussion here, and we hope to see all of you back in September. Thanks, everybody, and have a great summer.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Right.